And I was like, cool, that's the plan. I got 5 years, buy a couple houses a year. I'll end up getting there over that time. But I just hit the ground hard. And at the end of that first year, we had either 11 or 13 units. And when we got the last short-term rental live, our cash flow was more than I was making from the Air Force for my W-2.
Hey everybody, welcome to the 0 to 100 podcast. And I'm with my number one sidekick, Gabriel Hamill. Fortunately, Mitch is out RVing his ass around the country. That's what Mitch does. He gets in his RV and he uses time freedom to RV his ass around the country. I'm back from vacation. I was in London last week, and we have a badass guest today. I'm really excited to talk to Blake. Before that, though, if you're just tuning into the 0 to 100 podcast, who the hell are we? We're all about scale. How do you use the vehicle of real estate to scale a portfolio in a relatively short period of time responsibly? Don't be a dumbass, but how do you scale real estate? How do you leverage real estate to generate cash flow to replace your living and lifestyle expenses? We call that retirement number one, or R1. And we talk to people that do mobile home parks and apartment complexes and triple net industrial, et cetera. I don't know if we've actually, have we had somebody, Blake's a hotel guy? We've had some hotel guys.
We've had some boutique hotel guys, yeah. But I think Blake's doing this on another level. I love your advice, Travis, of not being a dumbass. That's good.
Step one, don't be a dumbass. We're in a weird time. It's 2025, and there was a big run up, and there was a lot of dumbasses out there doing a lot of dumbassery out there.
I hope you're not calling our guest a dumbass, Travis.
Blake looks like he's clean cut. He's ex-Air Force, like me. He looks smarter than me, though. I'm actually really excited to dig into your story, Blake. I'm going to get into your intro here. So this is Blake Dailey. Blake Dailey is an Air Force vet, ex-Air Force, turned into a real estate investor who transitioned from single-family homes to boutique hotels. And he began his investing career in Panama City, Florida. I've had some good times in Panama City, by the way, by renovating hurricane-damaged properties, and has since built a $17 million portfolio of boutique hotels across Lake Tahoe, Panama City Beach, and the Smoky Mountains. Blake specializes in the acquisition, operation, and construction management of value-add hospitality assets and has overseen over $5 million in renovations. His boutique hotel business generates over $3 million in annual revenue, and he's hosted tens of thousands of guests. Blake now helps others scale from short-term rentals to boutique hotels, creating lifestyle-driven businesses that blend travel, investing, and unforgettable guest experiences. Blake, welcome to the 0 to 100 show.
Thank you guys for having me. Hearing all that, I'm like, man, is that where I started? It seems so long ago. We're in Panama City buying those hurricane damaged houses, and I've just been in hotels so deep for so long. I'm like, man, it's hard to see anything else, but glad to be here, guys. Happy to break down how we got the start, how it all transformed into the hotels we're doing now, and hopefully provide good value for the audience.
Yeah, absolutely. Blake, let's talk about pre-real estate. So even back before Panama City, you were in the military. Let's talk about what did that look like? How'd you transition from military to becoming a real estate investor, and specifically boutique hotels?
Yeah, so I started, it's a funny story. Like my start as an Air Force officer and real estate investor happened at the same time. And I commissioned on May 30th from the Air Force Academy. So I commissioned as a second lieutenant, got my first duty station as Panama City, Florida. And we're like, cool, we're trading out the mountains for the beach.
And what year was that?
That was 2019. So just graduated from college, was 22, green behind the ears.
Did you say you're an academy guy? I'm sorry, I had to interrupt. Were you academy or were you ROTC?
Yeah, academy. Yep, I played football at the academy all 4 years.
Nice.
And then we got to Panama City, and after that second year, I played football. So that second semester, senior year, I didn't know anything when we got to Panama City other than what I learned on Bigger Pockets and read in real estate books. Just consuming everything that I could to prepare myself for when I got to my first duty station, and getting 7 hours back every day from not having to go to the weight room and film room and practice and recovery and everything else, and put that into real estate. I was like, this seems like a good use of time. And I really liked it. And I was like, this is the path. This is what we're going to do. In 5 years, we're going to have enough real estate, enough rentals to be able to get out of the Air Force and not need to stay in a stay in active duty or stay in a job and it's going to be awesome. We ended up doing that in 1 year, but still had the 5-year commitment. So 4 years left.
Blake, why was real estate on your radar that early? Like, how'd you find the podcast and the book and all that? Like, where'd that come from?
Yeah, I think business was always the interest for me. Like I knew I wanted to start my own business, run a business, and be like creative in entrepreneurship. Like I wanted to create things and either work in a business after the Air Force or start one. And I think it was all this really going back to is like this pursuit of freedom through optionality, having the choice of what I could do on a daily basis, where I put my time, where we were located, we being my wife and I, because we were together at the time, like where we wanted to live, where we wanted to go, what we do, who we spent time with. So it was like the freedom around that is like business makes the most sense to have that lifestyle. Like I grew up in a small town in Indiana with a single mom on food stamps and welfare. So it was a lot of not having things, I think, growing up that was like, I want to have a different trajectory, right? I see people have stuff. I know if you work hard, if you go to school, right, follow that path, you can have those things. I was like, this is my way to get out of the small town, right? And so I got the football scholarship, went to the academy, got out of that small town environment to do something more. And it was always just an interest to build and to have the choice of what to work on, when to work, and really have more freedom around it.
But you had mentioned that you got commissioned in 2019, this year, man, you're fresh, you're new. You said that within a year you accomplished your goal. You had scaled a portfolio to the size that generated enough cash flow to give you essentially the lifestyle options to not work or continue to scale or get out of the Air Force.
Yeah, aside from having the 4-year Air Force commitment left at that time, yes. So going in, I had a 5-year commitment. You hear all the time academy grads saying, oh, he's a 5 and diver. And he did his 5 and dived. And I didn't know when I graduated that was going to be the case for me. I was going into my career in the Air Force, and I was like, I want to build this real estate portfolio so that at the end of my 5 years, I have the option to stay in because it's what I want to do, not because I have to stay in for the paycheck. So in those 5 years, I knew we'd PCS a couple times, a permanent change of station, go to different bases, live in new areas, be able to buy new houses and just build up portfolios where we went. And I was like, cool, that's the plan. I got 5 years, buy a couple houses a year. I'll end up getting there over that time. But I just hit the ground hard that first year and really enjoyed it. I was knocking on doors. I was doing the cold calls. I was 22 years old, negotiating deals with older people in their living rooms on these houses that the hurricane had just wiped out. I'm like, I can renovate this. I can buy this from you. Here's my price. And trying to get people to take me seriously to buy their house. And a few of those ended up working out, put the right pieces in place, the lenders, the partners, the private lenders, whatever it was. And I think at the end of that first year, we had either 11 or 13 units. I can't remember when we got the last duplex exactly, but it was 11 or 13 units. 8 of those were short-term rentals, 3 were long-term rentals. Oh, so it was 11. Yeah. 8 were short-term, 3 were long-term. And when we got the last short-term rental live, our cash flow, averaged over the year, was more than I was making from the Air Force from my W-2.
Blake, tell us about that very first deal. So you were door knocking, maybe you were cold calling. Tell us about that first property and then the couple properties after that. And how did you find it, negotiate it? What kind of terms, all those things?
The very first one was my VA loan. So we got to Panama City actually a couple weeks before I reported into my new job. So we're living in the temporary lodging, like basically the hotel room on base. And we were putting out offers and got a house under contract. By that time, I'd already met with a couple different lenders, told them what I wanted to do. Before I left the academy, I got my certificate of eligibility. That's what it was. So I got that before I left the academy because I knew we were going to buy a house on our new duty station. So closed that first one, 0 down with a VA loan with only $2,200 in our bank account, and negotiated in the closing costs so that we could buy the house with the money that we had. And then it was a house with a guest house. So we lived in the main house. Me and my wife, who just got married a month ago, moved into this house. And the mother-in-law suite, we rented out on Airbnb. And because we just used all our money to buy the house and close on it, we furnished it with a credit card, got it live on Airbnb within a week or so, and then got it rented. And luckily it was in July during the summer. And we got a bunch of bookings to be able to pay off the credit card fee or the credit card bill. And in that amount of time, That's when I was still doing like the door knocking and the cold calling and trying to wholesale to get some other leads. And I found one that was hurricane damaged right outside of base that I found just driving for dollars. So just on my way to work in the mornings, or I think we were still living in the temporary lodging facility on base, the TLF. I was just driving around the areas around base trying to get familiar with the area. Found this house, wrote down the address. I would do handwritten letters. Nicole would write the return addresses and put the stamps on them. Our goal was to put out 50 a week. And one of those letters right off of base called me back, got that under contract, and then partnered up with some people I met at a local real estate meetup when we got to the area. They provided the renovation funds. I managed the work. We did the rehab together, and then we refinanced it. I got them all their money back plus some, and I held it as a rental.
They were partners of yours. They weren't private money lenders. These guys came in as investors with you. You found the deal. They provided the cash.
Yep.
And then you split the profits.
Were they only providing debt, or did they share in the equity as well?
They actually only provided the renovation fund. So I got the seller financing note, and then I got the bank loan on the back end to take them out. So they just provided the renovation funds. When I refinanced them, I gave them their money back plus a big chunk. So they got all their return like through the refi proceeds. So that was like a perfect BRRRR and then some, because I got everything paid back plus their return, and then kept it as a rental.
So they were lenders then, essentially. They gave you the money. You rehabbed it, you paid them back plus a return, and then you kept ownership.
Yeah, I would say it was more of a partnership. I was a young guy that just got into the market. When we got there in July, and this was in August. So they walked me through it. I was more of I brought the deal and got the seller financing terms and the contract signed. And then they were the experience that I needed, the connections, and then I just did the work and they provided the capital. So it was really a mix of a private money lender and a mentor at the same time. And then we turned around the next month and did another flip together. And then we split the proceeds on that one.
You proved yourself on that one. They're like, okay, yep. Blake knows what he's doing. He's a go-getter. By the way, Gabe, a private money note is when the seller plays the bank. And I'll explain that to you later. Gabe, got to teach you.
Thanks, Travis. I appreciate that. Blake, it's interesting because you said when you showed up, you went to real estate meetups, you built relationships. I say it all the time. I can trace every deal I've ever done back to a conversation or relationship, whether that's seller financing, private money, hard money, just an acquaintance or relationship, a mutual friend, whatever it might be. Did you realize how important that was early on? I know you did those things such as going to the real estate meetups, but I'm sure as your story continues, there's probably a lot of other relationships that have happened along the way, but it looked like from the get-go, it started as a relationship.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, Gabe, because any deal, any business, like you don't do it without other people. Like you need those other people, whether it's the lender, the partner, the investor, the deal finder, the partner you do the deal with, the contractors, like all of those are relationships that you have to have in place to be able to get deals. And I didn't really recognize the significance at the time, I don't think. I just had no other options. I was like, I just bought a house with 0% down, and it was like all I could do to cover the closing costs and then get the Airbnb rented. So it's like I didn't have any other options. I couldn't go out there and use my own money. I didn't have family members that I could raise money from or get them to be my private money lenders. All I had was to create the network and create the relationships that I needed to get deals done. So like my one focus outside of like my wife at the time, like we just got married. So there was some focus there. We just got a little puppy at the time who's, I don't know, almost 6 now. But it was just finding deals. If I can go find good deals, then I can find a partner, I can find a lender, I can find an investor, I can find a contractor to get it done. So it's like my sole focus was finding deals. So it was driving for dollars, it was pulling lists, it was making the calls, it was knocking on the doors, it was all the work into getting a contract signed. And then I knew I could sell the contract to another investor who would do the flip. So basically wholesale it to them. Or I could keep it as a rental. I could do it as flip. So like I had all these different strategies. I could do short-term rental. I could do long-term rental. So I did all of those things. So just like the focus was in finding the right deal and then letting the pieces fall in place through those relationships. So it's like, all right, got a deal. Now I got to go find a person to help get it done.
Yeah, Blake, when you're sharing some of these early stories, it makes me think about, you had your mindset right. Like you even said at the top of the show, I knew that real estate would be my path. You knew that before you even started. And I often say, there's the mindset piece. You believe it's possible for you, and then you go and take action. And you did those things. Like you believed it was possible for you, and then you took action on those things to actually achieve it. I'm curious, like, why do you believe that some people are willing to take that action, and a lot of people are not. Like they've read the books, they have listened to the podcasts, but there's, whether it's fear or something else holding them back, you weren't afraid to take action. You did all the things, and eventually that manifests into a deal. But why is it that some people just get stuck in this, like they have the knowledge, but they do not take action?
Oh man, really good question. I think in my own personal experience, I see two things. One is that you don't need all the information, you just need enough, right? Like I had just come out of playing Division I football, and every week we're playing up against big teams. We played in the Big House, we played Michigan State, we played Wyoming with Josh Allen, we played really good, talented people. And going into Saturday's games, you're never 100% prepared. Like you just got beat up last weekend, then you got to get your body right, your mind right, study and practice to get as ready as you can be for next Saturday. So no matter what, you're going to have kickoff at Saturday at noon and you're going to battle. So like you never get 100% ready. So I think for me, it's like you get ready enough. You get as prepared as you can. And then all that there's left to do is action. There's nothing left to do but the steps that you need to take to get to that game or whatever in this analogy. So I think as I started in business, it was the same thing. I'm never going to have all the answers. I'm new at this. Why would I expect to know every single contractor or all the different steps that a lender is going to need if I just printed out a contract that said seller financing to give it to the title company? I was like, can we close this? Like, I don't know. Like I just asked a bunch of questions. So I think one is people think they need it all. That they need all the information before they take the action, but you get the information through the action. That's the point that they miss. And then the other thing I see is there's just like this hesitation or fear around what if. Like, what if I fail? Or what if it doesn't go right? Or what if I have a zoning issue? Or what if I get it under contract and can't find an end buyer or an investor or a lender, and I'm left there just holding this piece of paper that expires and I've got money on the line, potentially. And I think how you get past that is, again, through the action. You could sit here and think about all the what ifs, all the bad things, all the things that could go wrong, all the risk points. But if you don't act on like towards the goal and act to mitigate what those risks are, then you never achieve the goal. So it's like one of like inaction of not knowing enough, and two is just fear. And the really bad situation is when you have both of those. If like you don't, like you haven't studied enough and you're just fearful of doing it. But those are the two most common things I see hold people up. And they're both, I think, just really unfounded blockers to getting where you want to go, like to buying your first rental, to jumping into commercial real estate for the first time, or doing your first multifamily or hotel or whatever. It's at each phase. Like it's not just getting started in the very beginning. I'm sure you guys have gone through this in different phases as you've scaled up, done a bigger deal, right? You're doing 100K, 200K deals, then you do your first $1 million deal, then you do your first $1 million raise, and then it just keeps going up from there. And you have those like uncertainty moments, but it's how you deal with the uncertainty. It's really just the action of going. So for me, being an athlete and just knowing that if I put in the work, results will happen. Like I know if I go to the gym, my muscles are going to get bigger. I know if I spend time in the film room, I'm going to get smarter and recognize the formation and know the play they're running. I know if I read this real estate book on managing rentals, if I do this tenant screening and get a tenant in there, that they're going to pay rent. And then if they don't pay rent, I do this on the 3rd day. And then I know I'm filing for the eviction on the 7th day based on my state. So it's just like going through those steps and taking them out one by one so that you'd have less excuses for yourself to hold you up.
Yeah, really well said. Really well said.
It's a common theme where people do that. They play that doomsday. They run doomsday in their head. Like they always go to like the worst case scenario. The house is going to burn down. You're going to be caught inside of it. Then you're homeless under a bridge. And at the end of the day, a lot of times the worst case, I mean, yeah, shit goes wrong, but doomsday worst case scenarios don't necessarily happen. And I love that you said, I think that's the first time I've heard someone say you sort through those things in your head through action, meaning I need to have enough knowledge. Too many people want to know. I see this with engineers a lot. I don't know if you're an engineer or not, so I don't want to shit talk engineers, but I see this with engineers. They want to know every single minuscule variable and they want to understand everything. And then they just end up doing nothing ever.
It's the definition of analysis paralysis. Like you let having all the information be your threshold of action. But the reality is you never have 100% of the information.
Never in business. I always equate business and real estate investing as a business to being on a boat, right? it's up, the waves are up, it's down, the wind's left and right. It's like at some point there are no rules. You can't apply like mathematical logic all the time to business. Sometimes you have to trust your gut. Sometimes you just have to get out there and do it. The last thing I'd say is, what if you never do anything and you never achieve your goals? What's the risk of that? To me, that risk is a lot higher than not doing anything at all.
Or like, I think of those early years, I had so many people. I love that you say what if, because I had so many people in those early years. What if this? And I'm thinking, what if it all goes right?
Gabriel, I'm so glad you said that, because I was about to say my thought process always, what if I get this deal? And what if our cash flow goes from A to Z, whatever that jump is? I'm like, that's worth it. You know what I mean? If I'm going to have a 50K of equity at the end of this BRRRR or at the end of this flip, like I've got a negative 22K net worth right now, like I did when I graduated college. So like the worst case scenario is I've got a property that's maybe a problem, but it's paying for itself, and I have this equity. Or even thinking about this, the worst case scenario is maybe you go through foreclosure, you get a hit on your credit for the 6 years or whatever it is. Guess what? There's other options, Gabriel's like you could do seller financing and never need a credit pull, never have to go through a bank, and still build your real estate portfolio. So there's like, when you think about these downsides, it's just shit in your head that's not real.
I love that you said trust the process too, because I think that's really important. Like we talk about this to people all the time, like in our elites. If you're out there networking, you're attending the meetups, you're talking to wholesalers, you're talking to brokers, you're doing direct to seller stuff, you're educating, you're putting the time in the books and the podcasts, trust the process. Eventually that's going to work, right? If an activity generates results, sometimes maybe that, especially when you start out, that activity is like misguided. You're not quite sure what you're doing, but just do something, get moving. And then a lot of times the rest takes care of itself. You meet the right person, they introduce you to the next person, you get educated in an asset class you didn't know about, a hard money lender comes out, an opportunity comes out, someone's selling their house, their mother-in-law has a house they want to offload, like trust the process. So I love that you said that.
Blake, I do want to get into the rest of your story and how you scaled. But before we do, I'm curious about when you were starting and you were telling your friends, what were they saying to you? And I ask you this because I got deployed in 2003, right after I read Rich Dad Poor Dad. And I was living in a friend's attic for $100 a month. I may have told you this story. I was living in a friend's attic for $100 a month. And then I get deployed and I'm telling all my friends overseas, I'm going to come back. I'm going to build this real estate empire, financial freedom, this, and retire young, that. I'm just quoting all the Rich Dad stuff and I am fired up. But again, I was living in a friend's attic for $100 a month. So most of my friends, most of the guys I was in the military with, even though a lot of it was just out of fun, they were like, you're a fucking idiot. What are you talking about? How are you going to go do this? So I'm curious because you hit the ground running. Like you're new in the military and you're out there driving for dollars and making offers and door knocking and sending letters. What were your friends saying to you?
Oh man, good. I almost like the negative talk of, oh, you can't do it. You're not going to make that happen that fast, or you're not going to be able to reach that goal when you're in the Air Force. You got too much going on. You just got married. There's all the negative things, or the negative talk about what I should be doing. It's like, how's somebody going to tell me what I should be doing that's going to benefit me the most when they're thinking through their lens of what they could do and what their life situation is? Like, mine's different.
Yeah, that shit fuels me too.
Yeah. So like for me, I'm like, it's fuel to the fire. I'm like, all right, hold my drink, watch this. But I think at the time, like with the friends that I was closest with, I think there's probably 3 tiers of it. Like tier 1 is like the friends that are like really close, like you could trust with these like bigger conversations, those deep and sensitive things. You know, this being one of them. Hey, I'm going to completely change everything. Like I'm an Air Force guy. I'm a football player. I'm a small town kid. I just got married. Like, my path is supposed to be set out for me. Like I go from 01 to 02 in 2 years, from 02 to 03, from lieutenant to first lieutenant to captain in that 4-year span. And then after that, I'm at major at year 12. And by year 20, I'm retiring. It's like the whole path is set up. So they're like, why would you invest and put anything other into your career? You get to retire when you're 42. Your life is going to be made for you. I'm like, but I could do that at 27, which I did. So I'm like, why would I, if I'm finding more joy and fulfillment in something else, that could be a really good path for you, but it's not the right path for me. And I was just never scared to lean into that of like what you think is best is I respect that. That's fine. But what's best for me is I've got this drive. And if I don't chase that, I'm going to be unsatisfied and then I'm not going to be happy. And I know you don't want that for me, but that's what you're telling me and you don't know it. So a lot of that was just turning it off. And then there's the funny stuff is like, oh, here's young Grant Cardone coming. Here's this guy thinks he's doing all this real estate stuff and just talking shit in a passive aggressive way. And I'm just like, keep saying it because it'll come true. Fest off of those comments.
Those are the guys that are like, when you're successful, they're like, oh, you got lucky. It must be nice.
Yeah. Same kind of feedback there. And I'm like, yeah, what they don't see with the must be nice comments is waking up at 4 a.m. to work, before work, going to work, then coming home from work to work and not seeing or spending time with my wife for a lot of time. And it's not seeing those friends for months or a year at a time or whatever, because you have to sacrifice a lot if you're trying to build something up in your 20s and 30s, or even if you start later in life, you're going to have to sacrifice the life you have now for the life that you want. And for me, being in my early 20s, seeing that path, like it was just an easy decision to make. It's like, I'll sacrifice my 20s to live my 30s just incredibly, like to have more wealth and abundance and freedom and be able to travel and all this kind of stuff. I was like, I'll sacrifice the days before we have kids and I'll not go out to the bars and I'll not stay up late on weekends because I got to get up at 4 a.m. to start working. So like for me, that was a lot of the not really cheering on and a few kind of people who understood it, at least supported it. But most people were just like, you should just be focusing on the Air Force. And of course you can't talk to anybody in the military about it because 99% of people are there to, and I'm not saying anything bad about people in the military, but 99% of people are there to like focus on being in the military and focus on that career path and focused on the 20 years and then retirement, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that. I completely support it. Loved my time serving. It just wasn't the career path that I wanted.
Just not the path you wanted for 20 years. Blake, let's shift gears a little bit into how you scaled, because you didn't stop with one home or even those first 11 or 13 units. How did you scale to where you're at today?
When I got to those 11 units, my net cash flow, like after all the expenses, what I was netting was more than I was making from the Air Force, like it's from my W-2. So at that point I was like, well, shoot, there has to be a pivot here. This is my 5-year plan. I just achieved it in 1 year. Like I just had my head down grinding and didn't like really realize the progress I was making because I was just in the weeds of like finding the deals, negotiating them, managing renovation work, all this kind of stuff and doing it while having a full-time job. So there's a lot going on that first year. And it wasn't a crazy amount of deals. I think that 11 units was 6 houses. It was 2 units in a single family house. So it wasn't a crazy amount of deals. That was like my first 3 months and then about every other month for that first year. But I got to that point and I was like, I need to go bigger. Like I set my goals way too low, knowing if I'm putting in this amount of work, this amount of intention, if I know what the goal is, like I've seen that I'm capable of doing it. Like I've proved it to myself that I can at least find deals and find the pieces that need to fall in place to make those deals happen. So then I pivoted into commercial multifamily. So we got to that point at a year in that my net cash flow was more than I was getting paid by the Air Force. And that was my 5-year goal that I just did in the 1 year, which was like, to me, kind of opened my eyes because I just had my head down grinding and not really seeing all the progress until we got done with the renovation. I was like, oh, shoot, look at that. Look at what we just did. I was like, Nicole, look at this. Look at this. That's crazy. And I knew at that point I needed to go into bigger deals and chase something that would be more of a challenge. Not that the deals I was doing weren't a challenge, but I was getting caught up with what I could do myself, like having those 6 or 7 houses, being the handyman. These were mostly Airbnbs. So being the guest relations guy, managing all the cleaners and the turns, like it was a lot for one person to do. And if we fast forward a little bit, I was like, I got into commercial multifamily for the economies of scale, for the efficiency, to have on-site management, to have that deal run without me having to be in the day-to-day of it. So it took me 10 months to close my first commercial multifamily deal. So it was a long process of learning how to underwrite and raise capital and what the difference between a 506B and a 506C is and how to talk to brokers and find deals and all that stuff that's different in the commercial space, which was a tough transition because I was going from closing deals every month or every other month with residential, and closing my first apartment took me 10 months. But I knew, again, like the goal and the path, it was going to be more efficient for me to go on these bigger deals. And I proved it to myself that I could find the deals and put the pieces together to close it. So that's what led me into my first commercial deal. Now it's funny because the hotel came pretty soon after. I think actually maybe the hotel predated the apartment closing by like a week, maybe 2 weeks. Like they were both in early February because I was under contract for a longer time on a multifamily deal. I think it was like 90 days. And in that time, I found this little hotel that was in Fort Walton Beach, so just an hour away from me, down by close to Destin, in between Eglin and Holbert Field, like the two Air Force bases there. And I was like, all right, it's pretty much the same market. It's the same seasonality. I've got these studios over here. I know pretty well how those studios over there are going to do. And this little 8 unit was $357,000. It was like barely more than I was buying the houses in Panama City for, but I got 8 units in one. And at the time I had 8 units and I was like, they were spread all over Panama City. I had to run around and do supply runs and all this other stuff and deliver, set up new units. But I was like, I could do it all there. Laundry's on site. Like that seems so much easier. And so I started talking with the seller about that, convinced him on seller financing.
Sorry, this was the hotel? You're talking about this 8?
This is the hotel.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah. So like in that process, learned and got familiar with commercial real estate through the apartment thing, and found the hotel in the meantime. And that's what started the beginning of the boutique hotels. And I still own the apartment complex today, and I just basically put all my time in a hotel since then.
Okay. So you're doing single family houses. You realize for the same amount of energy and effort, a lot of people have this sort of aha, I can take down more units in one transaction. That's one due diligence period, one underwriting period. So I love that. Obviously there's some significant nuances when you're talking single family houses, how they're valued, also how banks lend on them. What would you say your reasoning for getting into larger properties was just, you just wanted to think, you realize you're thinking too small. What was your biggest aha when you, maybe after you close that first deal, or maybe 6 months after you close that first commercial property, what was your biggest aha as it pertains to comparing the two asset classes, single family houses and larger commercial properties?
Yeah, I make this comparison all the time with like residential, commercial, short-term rental or an Airbnb versus a hotel. And the valuation piece is huge. To know that you're in the residential side of the house, you're capped at the value of other similar houses in that same area. So, you can put all this money into renovating the house, right? But you're going to be limited to the comps in that area. You might get a small bump of like, all right, this is now the nicest. You're setting a new comp in the area, but you're never going to be above like 10, maybe 20% max of the comps in that area. And that'd be on like the very high end. Usually it's a lot lower. So if every other house is selling for $500K, you do a full renovation and you're doing a short-term rental, right? And you generate $200,000 a year in bookings, you're still going to be a $500,000 house. No matter how much money you generate with that property, it's a residential property. So that's how it's valued. That's how the asset class is valued. Now on the hotel side, it's different. Now you're valued on the income. So your value is driven by the net operating income, which is all of your gross income minus your operating expenses, gives you the net operating income, or the NOI. Then you take that NOI divided by the cap rate for the market, which is kind of like your equivalent factor for an A-class brand new apartment. It's going to be probably like a 6 cap, maybe a 5 cap. B-class in a different area of town might be a 8 or a 9 cap, and it just goes up, right? So like that cap rate is what judges your asset class there. But either way, the more you drive up the NOI, the more the value goes up. So if I buy an underperforming hotel and if I triple the income and the NOI doubles or triples, then my value is doubling or tripling. So that's the really cool part about hotels, is you have so many more levers to increase the value. It could be cutting expenses. It could be renovating the rooms and generating higher ADRs, or average daily rates, like what you charge guests to stay there every night. It could be putting in a little cafe or a bar. It could be putting in vending machines or paid laundry. It could be adding units. Like all these things that drive up the NOI drive your value, and you as the operator have the control. Whereas at the house, the market or the appraiser has the control. So that was a big aha moment for me to say, okay, cool. Like I can just operate better than everybody else and create way more value. To me, I like that, because then I feel like I have the control.
So for those of you that are listening going, oh, cap rate, I hate that. I don't understand cap. It's basically, think of it this way: for every annual dollar of profit, so net operating income, by the way, does not include debt service. It's just your operating income and expenses. For every annual dollar of profit you drop to the bottom line in that property, you increase the value 10 to 20 times. depending on the cap rate of the area. That's the way to look at it. So a lot of people look at, that's how, really it's how businesses, you're buying cash flow streams, you're buying small businesses. Businesses are valued based on a multiple of the net operating income, which is the same thing as dividing your net operating income by a cap rate. The lower the cap rate, the higher the value. And that's a big aha. And the fact that Blake said you control your outcome, I think that's really critical, because I've seen people that'll buy, I live in a resort town, they'll buy a single family house. They'll crank up the Airbnb income and they'll ask, and my wife's a broker, so they'll want this giant price tag for this property. And you have to break the news to them. You're like, sorry, dude, it's still a single family house and it's still going to be valued by the banks, by other investors, and by appraisers based on what Johnny's house down the street sold for.
Yeah. Yeah. Nobody's buying a house to be a business unless it's zoned commercially. If you're zoned residentially, it's just that same buyer for the same amount of money could go buy a commercial asset, a hotel, and not have that risk. Because if they buy the house based on the cap rate, who's their end buyer? Like, it gets inflated really quick. I mean, the whole reason why, and it's a good thing, is it protects home prices, it protects rental rates. Like the same thing for like Airbnb regulation, right? You don't have that in hotels and you're valued based on the income. So I really just see hotels better in all regards. And it takes you kind of like running one and like getting the appraisal or selling a few of these things like I have to be like, okay, cool. Airbnb time was well spent because the foundations were built, but now it's hotel focus.
Because the operations are actually probably similar and maybe even a little easier because, like you said, you have all these units under the same roof. But that's something people forget too. To scale, in my mind, you have to drive a lot of equity growth fast. If you want to scale your balance sheet, you want to scale your net worth, you want to scale quickly. And when you can control that outcome and you can control the pace at which you increase the value of that real estate, the faster you're going to be able to increase equity, maybe refinance, pull capital back out of it, redeploy that into another asset. On these first deals that you did, the hotel and the apartment, tell us about the lending, tell us about the capital stack, tell us about pick the apartment building or pick the hotel. Tell us about how you structured that. How did you close that thing?
Let's do the hotel because I think it'll be more tangible as a $357,000 purchase. So that's going to keep a lot of people in the conversation here. People are buying houses for more than I bought this hotel for. And that is a good deal, but it's not an unreasonably like deal of the century. Like there are deals out there like that if you guys look hard enough, or if you guys are putting in the work. So 8 units, I think it was total of, they're about 330 square feet per unit, or 350 maybe. So it's about 3,100 square feet. So not a huge place, little outdoor area. I negotiated seller financing with the seller. So 10% down at a 4.3% or 4.32% interest rate. So so that way the payments weren't even, whatever it was, $3 or $4K a month, something like that. And I raised private money from people I knew out of my network that had seen what I was doing, that maybe had invested in a deal with me before, or that I met at my meetup that I ran in Panama City Beach. So I brought 5 of them together. They provided the down payment and the repair costs, and I put in money as well. So I was, I guess, technically the 6th person putting money into it. And we did the renovation, completed the work. It was during COVID, so it took longer and was more expensive and everything, but we got through it. And then when I got to the end, we were all in for about $1,050,000, maybe 1.1, somewhere in there. It appraised for 1.6. So I got a loan at 70% LTV for $1,050,000, took out all the investors, got everybody paid back. I left a little bit of my own money, so it wasn't a perfect BRRRR thanks to the COVID ramp ups. But I got all the investors, their money back plus interest, and held it, or still hold it for cash flow, and have that deal today.
That's phenomenal. Now, explain why. I know you already explained this because you gave a really good example of how a commercial property is valued based on the NOI, residential based on comps. So for those listeners that maybe missed, how did this become a $1.6 million property? Explain why it was appraised at $1.6 million.
Yeah. So based on the income of the units and the NOI of the property, I think our NOI was, what we used for that appraisal was like 160,000 maybe. I think they valued it as 10 cap. So yeah, they called our NOI 160 and had a 10 cap. Basically the 160,000 divided by 10% gave a $1.6 million value. And that's what the bank looked at. They looked at the appraisal and said, okay, this is a $1.6 million property. We'll lend 70% of that. So we'll give you the $1,050,000. And then that paid off the seller finance note, paid off the investors and their interest. Paid
And you did
back
this by
most of my
fixing
money.
it up and driving up nightly rates, right? You increase you make it a nicer property.
Yeah, I don't even know. I didn't even get books for this purchase. Like I didn't get his P&Ls. I didn't get there's no property management system or PMS reports. There was no proof of what he actually made with this thing. I was just like, 357,000 seems good enough to buy this. And he seller financed it. So I didn't need his books to go get the loan. And yeah, he was renting by the week and had a lot of vacancy. I mean, it was in really bad condition. Like we found needles, we found heated up spoons when we did demo. They had plywood or compressed particle board as the walls instead of drywall. They had plumbing outside of the walls going right over, and water lines going right over.
Sounds like Oklahoma City, Gabe. Sounds like Oklahoma City.
Over outlets, like nothing was
right.
the code. There was a header on a door frame that was made out of concrete block that was like falling in, and they just duct taped it. And I was like, oh, that's gonna fall and just
so this guy's
this
guy's a slumlord. He's a piece of work, right? But what type of hotel is it today? Like it was known probably around the block as like ghetto flats. This is where you rent by the hour or by the week, and
definitely rent by the hour spot back in the day. But yeah, we fixed it up, put security cameras outside, redid the whole outside, like new windows, doors, siding, roof, everything, new landscaping. So it looks much better today. It kind of operates as a little bit of a hybrid between a short-term rental and a boutique hotel. Like we're on Airbnb, we're on Booking.com, we're on Expedia. The units all have kitchenettes and open living kind of bedroom area, kitchenette, dining table, pull-out couch, TV. So it's a very functional space. So they kind of look like little apartments, but they have shared walls. So there's a shared parking area, shared amenities outside, shared laundry room. So there's aspects of a hotel, there's aspects of an Airbnb. I think in a lot of ways you get the pros with eliminating the cons of each. Like you get the flexibility of booking, the platforms, and the reach of being a short-term rental, the ease of check-in, right? Automated check-in. But with hotels, you get like the consistency and the quality and like the standard, the staff that's there if you need stuff because they're there taking care of the property, turning other units, doing laundry, stuff like that. So it really is a nice little strategy if you can find these 6-unit, 8-unit, 10-unit garden style apartments or older motels, hotels, or cabin communities or whatever, like multiple units on one site, whether they share walls or not, can be really cool because they're easy to run because it's only 8 to 10 properties or 8 to 10 units in one spot. So it makes it really easy, but it's a lot more scalable than having those same 10 units spread out over your town or your county because everything's there. All your cleans, all your landscaping, all your maintenance, all your laundry, all your guests, it's so much easier to build your systems and train people to take care of it.
How do you manage this 8-unit? Is it on-site manager or is it keyless entry, online bookings?
This is why this one kind of operates like a hybrid, almost a little bit more like an Airbnb because we don't have on-site staff. We have our staff that will go do the turns, upkeep the property, do the laundry, though we can send them out if there's a lockout or a guest issue, a complaint or something like that. But most of the time you're not going to see anybody. Like it feels just like checking into an Airbnb, but there's 7 others when you go to check in. Whereas our bigger hotels like Tremont Lodge in Tennessee, for example, has front desk, has maintenance on site, has a general manager there. We have, 8 or 10 housekeepers. We have 16 or 17 employees at the hotel. It's a much bigger resort feel. And then if you look at like our 20 units, we have a manager for that market that'll be at the hotel. They'll bounce around and do different stuff, but they're not necessarily working out of the office. We don't have front desk staff. It's still self-check-in. So we have the people there to service guests, but it's a lower expectation than what you'd have at the Marriott or whatever.
So you've got this. So I heard this. So you went 8-unit real quick. How big was that apartment complex that you purchased? Just quickly.
The apartment was 66 units.
Okay. So that's a pretty good size deal, but then that's your only apartment complex and everything else has been hotels.
Yep. Everything else is hotel since then.
And you mentioned some pretty good size hotels. Give us a quick glimpse of your portfolio.
Give us an example of your portfolio and maybe one of your most recent deals or deal you're working on.
The whole portfolio is over 200 units. So that after that first year where I was telling you guys, we surpassed our W-2 cash flow. The year after that, we bought 5 hotels. maybe within 14, 15 months of that period, we bought 5 hotels. And it was that little 8 unit that started it all, which was, it closed the week before the apartment complex. And I saw the numbers and like the take home of that little 8 unit was about what I would take. I personally would get with separate from the other partners on the apartment complex. I was like, cool, I'm just gonna do more of these. I'm gonna do boutique hotels now. And started talking about that at my meetup, started having more conversations around that. And deals just quickly came. I got 2 more in Panama City Beach, 2 more in Tahoe in the next year. So that was 5 hotels in the first 13 months after closing the first one. That was 85 units total. So it was an 8 unit, a 14, a 15, another 14, and a 20 unit. And then we managed my STRs that I own. So altogether that portfolio was 85 units. And then the most recent deal, I sold 4 of those, rolled them into this bigger deal in Tennessee. It's a 130 unit hotel and resort. It's got a wedding and event venue. We got 8 different buildings over 10 and a half acres, and we're adding a bunch of amenities. So this one is much more, I think, upscale, experience focused, much larger, much more employees, revenue wise and employee wise of like that whole portfolio before is like this one single deal.
Did you notice that you traded up houses for a large hotel? Gosh, there's a game.
That does sound familiar. Interesting. That does sound like a childhood game. I just can't put my finger on it. What is that?
Yeah, everybody thought it was a game, but there's truth. And people like that listen, like you scale. A lot of people will buy single family houses, build equity, sell or roll those via 1031 exchange or whatever the case is. They'll roll those into larger. You take that equity. You're always looking at your cash and equity. I'm assuming you had probably equity that was producing cash flow, but not as efficiently and not as much as the cash flow that you're getting off that Tennessee hotel that you've rolled the equity into, I would assume.
Yep. Much more equity to be gained in one single deal here. And then once it's stabilized, will be a lot more cash flow too. And then we'll at some point do the same thing. Sell this one and go buy either another one or 2 or a bigger one. Only time will tell.
So how do you guys, we have a small boutique hotel. It's 10 units and we've been learning for the last 4 years. We're mobile home park investors, Mitch and I, who's the other guy not on this call. But like, who lends on these hotels? Number one, because lending was always an issue. Is it SBA financing? Is it local banks?
Yeah, 4 years ago is definitely tougher. I think in the last several years, more lenders have stepped into the space, but SBA for sure. Yeah, finding a good SBA lender is a huge benefit because I think it's like a lot of cases with lenders, you get one deal with them, close it and show you can cover debt service. And they're like, all right, let's do your next loan. Like, when are you going to find the next property? They, as a business, need to originate loans to make money. So make them happy. Bridge lenders is also a big one. Institutional hard money, bridge lenders that can't wrap them in the same boat sometimes. If you need to close, right? It's going to be higher interest debt. You're going to have points. You're not going to hold it for very long. But if it gets you into the purchase, if you can step in, do your value add, do some renovations, and then refinance, very feasible thing to do. Or where I usually start is the local banks, the local community banks, the credit unions, the people that know the area, that probably know the deal. They're familiar with the history. They see the potential. That's very relationship based as well. They've got to like you. They've got to like your plan. You've got to lay it out for them in a very, as a lender, they are risk adverse. Like, their whole job is to not lose money. Like, they'd rather not lose money than make a risky bet to make some money, right? Because they're just making money on their interest. So they want to make sure that the property that they lend on can cover the debt. So that can be sometimes harder to convince the local banks of that. If they see value add and hospitality, they typically don't like those two together. I call that like the double whammy of getting hotel loans. So I kind of go down this route first. There's always seller financing. Always make that offer. Even put out 2 offers. Here's a lower offer with bank financing. Here's a higher offer with seller financing. Put that in the discussion. And there's a lot of like things that you typically have to do to get seller financing on the table. So I'll say in order, if you could do these, I would always pursue seller financing first and bring that in as a discussion and give out 2 offers, a lower one with bank financing, a higher one with seller financing, and ask some strategic questions like what they need the money for. Are they retiring? Are they moving closer to grandkids? Are they buying another property? Because that will help structure that seller financing offer. Then would be the local lenders, community banks, credit unions, the local banks in that area, then SBA, then bridge debt, right? It's just knowing kind of like down the line to go. But if you can't get anybody else and you have to pay 14%, it's probably still better than not getting the deal at all if your deal makes sense. So that's how I think about the lending.
Okay. I appreciate that because I know lending's always been a weird one for us. So it's like you can't get typical like agency non-recourse type debt. You got to get creative with seller financing, SBA, local banks or credit unions that know the deal. That makes sense to me. Okay, so another question I have for you here. Tell us about lifestyle design, because a lot of what we talk about in this show or in the 0 to 100 tribe or in our elite mastermind is how do you use real estate to support a lifestyle, which is time freedom. I have the time to work if I want, or I have time freedom not to work if I want. And I would assume some of our listeners that listen to this are going, how am I supposed to have time freedom if I have staff, if it's a business, if I have employees and payroll, et cetera. But I noticed at the beginning of the show, you mentioned this portfolio gives you time freedom, gives you lifestyle. So explain how you set up your portfolio to serve you as opposed to you serving it.
Yeah. And in my opinion, having the staff, the people and the systems are how you really get out of it, or how you get out of the business. I don't know how many short-term rental investors you guys have that listen to the show, but any of them with like more than 3 to 5 STRs know exactly what I mean. Because you get so stuck in the messaging, the talking to cleaners, like one reservation changes and it throws off your whole night, or you get one bad guest, it ruins all your whole week potentially. I don't know how many bad guests we've had in the last month or the last 6 months, because I don't really deal with them unless it's like a really bad issue that the team has to bring up to me. Otherwise, they handle it. So having the team in place, as you scale, it's like different layers of filters that filter the stuff from coming up to you. Like you have less problems that come to you. You have less stuff to review. You have less decisions to make, ideally, right? If you set this up the right way, but you still have people to manage, or maybe depending on your size, you have one person to manage that then manages the people in your business. And I truthfully might not be the best example of this. I got into this for the lifestyle design, but my decision, my choice is always to do more work. Like I'm always a reinvest the profits and the time kind of person. But what I really like about it is we can take off and we can go, like we just did a retreat in January to one of our members of our hotel launch community to go stay at their hotel and get everybody else who's buying hotels to stay at their hotel. So just like 3 or 4 days of bonding over this, being in a cool environment, doing massages in the rain room and the sauna and the cold plunge and the hot tub. And we could go to Tahoe to go ski at Heavenly because we own a hotel that was walking distance to the gondola. And we can still go to Panama City Beach because we have short-term rentals there. So we're trying to plan a trip for this month in April, because April is like my favorite month down there. It's after spring break, but it's warm, but it's not crowded. It's awesome. So we have all these places that we can go when we choose to. And I think that's what's cool about the short-term rentals and the boutique hotels, is because you can really build a lifestyle business around it, centered around like serving other people. And if like you're a person that likes hospitality or helping provide a great stay or a great experience for other people, and that fulfills you, such a good way to do it. And then you have the creativity of the design and the amenities that you can add. And then in my opinion, it's probably the best like ROI real estate strategy out there, or at least the highest cash on cash strategy out there. So if you add up great returns, great locations, and great properties, it's hard to beat, in my opinion.
No, I think it's great. I think you've created a business that you can kind of work in and play in all in one time and focus on the parts of the business that you enjoy. And some of that seems like it includes being able to be at the properties or other people's properties, doing all those outdoor activities that you enjoy doing. Blake, we have one final question that we ask all our guests. And so we're going to ask you as well. Tomorrow, if you had lost it all, so you do not have your properties, you do not have your cash flow, your net worth, or your network. So you've lost everything except for your knowledge. You're sitting on a friend's couch that he threw out on the side of the road. So you're
I was
sitting
going to say
on
your network's gone. So you're sitting on a couch just in the middle of nowhere or something.
Yeah, you're sitting on a couch on the side of the
couch.
road. It's a nasty, wet, dirty couch. You've lost it all, but you still have your knowledge. What do you do? What do you do next? What do you do that first day, that first week, that first month to get you back to where you are today, or farther than where you are today?
Very first, I'd probably go back to exactly what I did in Panama City, because I couldn't imagine starting as fast as we did. I knew the things that would work in theory, but I had no way to know for sure until doing them. It'd be go to local real estate meetups or business club or whatever it is. Like for me, it was the real estate meetup. So I'd go there, I'd start building back the network. And the second thing is, if I have a car, I'm driving for dollars. If I don't, I'm hitching a ride with Pete and Joe, and I'm walking neighborhoods I guess I don't even have a lunch break. So I'm just walking neighborhoods, writing down addresses till my legs get sore. And then I'm going to go and probably go to the library because I lost it all. So I'm going to get a free library card and look up the addresses. I'm going to figure out a way to get 10 cents to make the print offs and get envelopes and get stamps and start mailing out the cheapest direct mail letters that I can. And then I'm probably going to walk over to these sellers' houses, negotiate good deals with them, lock up a deal. And I'm either going to wholesale or go find a partner to get the deal done. But I'm probably going to wholesale this one because I need some kind of money right off the bat. So then I'm going to go back to the meetup and say, hey, I got this great deal under contract. Who wants to buy this? And if I really wanted to get it moved, I'm like, I got it under contract for $120K. I'll sell it to you for $121K or $122K. Then I'm going to take that $1,000 or $2,000, reinvest it back into the marketing to do that same thing until I have $5,000 or $10,000 a month coming in. And then I can start to like cherry pick the houses that I want to keep for my own for either flips for bigger profit or for rentals, and then decide, do I want to do STR or long-term rental on them? But I'm probably going to go back to building up the short-term rentals, because even in today's market, if you're in the right areas, if you do the right design, if you do add the right amenities, short-term rental is going to always outperform, like on your cash-on-cash basis. So then I'm going to start to build up the more passive cash flow. And I say passive like with parentheses, because it's never passive, hands out of it, right? But it's going to be pretty hands off because I've got all the knowledge, right? I'm going to immediately go hire a $4 VA to do all my $4 an hour VA to handle all the guest messaging and like refunds and disputes and stuff like that. So I can focus on finding more deals and adding to the portfolio. And then within 12 months, I'm going to go buy the next hotel.
Blake, I love your answer. Maybe one of the most detailed answers that we've ever had. Blake's going to get his ass off the nasty couch, take some action, buy a shit ton of real estate, and do it all over again. I love it.
Last thing I'll say is, he goes to a meetup, by the way. I don't know if people have heard that meetup. And not only that, but I think you're running your own meetup, right? So when you run your own meetup, you're a thought leader. Even if you don't know what you're talking about, you're going to get deals and capital. And we talk about this all the time. Become a thought leader, tell everybody what you're doing, build relationships, and it reduces a lot of the friction in scaling a real estate portfolio.
Blake, I truly appreciate having you on, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. This was fun.
Appreciate you and look forward to meeting you in person someday. Awesome.
Yeah, absolutely.